Okay, right. Hello and welcome back to another video. So this is the second of the dev diary updates for the remake of the Particle Cave. Been a busy week, lots of things have happened, so we'll just start with a quick kind of overview of the scene and where we are now, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about the work that's been done this week and some interesting things that have come up out of kind of workflow. So as you can see, we have a huge improvement and a huge kind of step forwards in the rocks in the environment. These are all Megascan imports, and so we've got really high geometry, Nanite working with that, and building up a huge kind of advantage and sort of quality boost to what's happening in the level. We have kept the old assets, so for a while we were working with them kind of hidden. It's still there. Now they've all been moved off to their own level, so we can still kind of refer back to them. And so obviously a lot of these structures haven't been updated yet, so we've got the tower and the bridges and the statue, all of that kind of stuff. It's all still there to refer back to, but it's hidden away for now. And yeah, so we're building up the caves, building up the environment on the outside. Obviously we've lost our bridge here, but moving through into the to the entrance. Just turn this on, go over exactly what just happened there in a bit, and that's to do with workflow, but we've got this kind of like icy entrance to the cave. So the original level had these completely ice rocks and no blending whatsoever, which didn't really work, so we've kind of tried to replicate that but in a way that makes a bit more sense. So we've got this kind of iced up area just kind of poking down into the cave. Still lots of set dressing and things to do here to control this, but it's developing, moving along nicely. Going on inside, we've got some first pass effects, some dusts and some atmospherics, things like that. Obviously the lighting has been reworked a couple of times. Lighting on a project like this is always just kind of one of those things you just have to keep doing and again, always constantly tweaking. Personally, I always think put your lighting in early. It's going to help show what you're working on. You can light a grey box scene, it's fine. You can just have to keep adjusting and things. Lighting doesn't take long to do in terms of putting the lights in, but it's the sort of thinking about it and letting it rest in your eyes and redoing it that kind of really takes the time, at least in my opinion. So yeah, lots of work on the lighting. A few drips coming down, don't know if you can see them. They're a little bit heavy handed at the moment. I've just put some actual mesh spheres in and dropped them down with a refractive material, but when they work quite nicely. So we'll maybe kind of refine that a little bit as we go. Some very first pass waterfalls. This was an asset I already had, so I've just chucked something in there to give myself a bit of an idea of where these things are. That's going to be a big focus of next week, trying to get some custom waterfall stuff in here, but I only wanted the caves to be complete first, so we could take the geometry and build up water materials coming down through that. Similarly, we've got some nice waterfall placeholders over here, and I think the lighting and the sort of effects coming in are going to look really nice. So yeah, that's where we are. Kind of cave is developing. As I say, some of the old assets have been hidden, so we're going to have to remake and sort of bring back in the statues and these kinds of things, but hopefully a big huge step forward. So couple of interesting things that have happened this week, or kind of like talking about workflow. So jumping back outside, we've got a lot of meshes that are being reused, both interior and exterior. Now, one of the problems with Nanite is you can't use vertex colors, or rather the vertex colors can only be applied to the mesh. They can't be kind of per instance painted like you would with the vertex paint mode. It doesn't work. It has to be the same vertex colors for all the meshes, at least as my understanding of current workflow with Nanite, and so we need another better way to control whether a mesh has, for example, snow on it or not. If we use a rock and we put snow in the material and it's here, well, that rock doesn't need snow on it, it doesn't work, but this rock might be used again outside, so we could just use different material instances, and we could say, right, this mesh has this material on it, this is used outside, that's fine, it's a workflow, but there is a slightly better workflow, I think, is what we've been trying to use here, and that's custom primitive data. If I open this up, Custom primitive data. So whenever we have a material, and if I open up the default material, we can have our parameters and we can assign it a custom primitive data channel. And so that's what we're doing here. I've turned on custom primitive data. This is using data channel 12. And so if I select this model, go down to custom primitive data, and I go down to snow amount, I can turn it on. And then this snow is using a world up shader. And so it does actually a 2-layer process. Firstly, it does it with the pixel normals from the normal map, so we get this sort of snow in the cracks on the edges, and then it does again from the vertex normals at sort of like a higher contrast, and so we get snow on top. It doesn't care about the normal map, and so you get this kind of like coverage. This is a material that I've been through in my materials course, so if you want to know more about that, you can go and check it out there. And we talk more about kind of custom data primitives, custom primitive data as well. Now, as a workflow, that's really nice. It allows us to go in and just kind of set values and tweak it per object. It isn't going to be paintable within the object, so you can't have snow at the top and not at the bottom, that kind of thing. But it does give you a nice way to control per mesh what the material is doing, rather than having hundreds of instances. So that's sort of the workflow we're trying to use here. I've done that on a few things. I've got these fog planes. If I select my fog plane, this again is using custom primitive data. And we're able to then specify things like intensity and sort of tweak it per object, and you can do tiling speed, all that kind of stuff. You can have gravity, so it's falling down. And these are just shader parameters, same as you would make any kind of shader. And you just assign it or enable custom primitives, and then assign it the value when you place it in the world, which is just a really nice way of working. Again, if there are, I don't know how many, so currently only 5, but if there's 5 of these, all with different instances, that's quite a lot of data to manage, whereas if it's just a mesh and you select it, it's much easier. Also, the models, if I've got 2 of these in screen, it will render the planes all using the same draw call. So because the data is being passed through the mesh, that's actually less draw calls or fewer draw calls on the render as well. So it's an optimized way of doing it as well, I believe. Cool. That's our kind of workflow and what we're doing. Obviously, there's some bits that need tweaking and polishing. Some of the rocks are iced or not iced, but there's also a sort of a further step I took. And so this model around here, the ice that I've got, I wanted to have dynamically added to the models. And if I select the blueprint here, what this blueprint is doing is actually taking some data and then applying it to the models. So if I move around here, you can see the ice kind of shader reacting to this blueprint. Now what this is doing is it's using an actor tag. So by selecting my static mesh, let's turn off particles for a second. If I select my static mesh over here, this has a tag, actor tag, ice entrance, and then the blueprint here uses the same tag, and what it does is it just, in the construction script, gets all of the actors that are static meshes, and then for each one checks if it is the static mesh, and then sets the custom primitive data on the model. So it uses the position of the blueprint, it uses the contrast settings, and then I've done a second point that allows me to do kind of like a fall off and like a long thin effect. And I'm going to do a second video today talking about this idea of a kind of like elongated Fresnel and some advanced Fresnel stuff, which I think is quite a nice way of working. And you can see it almost looks like a lighting effect. This is the same kind of calculation you get on lighting, but by placing it around and dynamically editing it, it's only a nice kind of workflow. Now there is a problem, unfortunately. Now I haven't seen people doing this workflow anywhere else, and it does have a few issues. Firstly, unfortunately, when we load the editor, if I go back to Cave New and reload it, it's not going to load in with the correct, oh, that's not the right level, that's the right level, it's just called Cave Map, there we go. It's not going to load in with the correct custom primitive data. So any values that we've written here, any values that we've set will be saved, but the blueprint is kind of overriding it. Now, maybe there's a way of doing this that I don't know, but the fact that the blueprint's not overriding the data's not being saved, it does unfortunately mean when you quit the game, or sorry, when you load the new map, it will not be there. So what I've done is I have on load the game, so on begin play I've run the same script, and then obviously when it's a blueprint, if you move it, it's going to run the construction script. And then the last thing I've done is added a button, and so the update value. So I've actually got 2 of these or 3 of these in the world, trying to kind of show them here. And the update values, this is a call an editor event, and what it will do, it will just run the construction script on all versions of this. So here, update values set to call an editor, get all actors of class, ice placement, blueprint, so all of the versions of this, and then for each one run the update script, and the update script just reruns the same thing as the construction script. So not the most perfect workflow, but basically anything you're doing when you're doing edits on this, any edit you make is going to rerun the construction script, which is then make it visible, or if you just load the game, you just have to select one of them, click update, and it will update everything, which I think is quite a nice workflow for something like this, where it's kind of like a dynamic thing. Once this has been set, we could just click and copy paste these values. It's going to be quite a sort of lengthy, time-consuming process, and also it's destructive. So if I then wanted to kind of move this and change things, you then have to go in and reset those values depending on what the new thing was and all that kind of thing. So as a workflow, I think works quite well for now. Cool. The other problem with this workflow is it doesn't work with level what they call mega assemblies, and so we'll have a look at those. So because this is using actor tag, any of these meshes that were set to be a mega assembly, you'd have to go in and set the tags inside the mega assembly, or we could just explode them. So what are mega assemblies? Well, we have one over here. This is a new feature in one of the more recent Unreals, 5.3 maybe. Basically, it is a separate level instance that gets loaded in to have geometry inside it. And what we can do, it's a bit like a group. So I can edit this in place, and I can select a model inside, and it's just made up of static meshes. It can only have static meshes inside. And then if I edit this and move it, if I were to save that, it would update to all instances of this mega assembly. You might see this one's got snow on it. If I select it down here, if I can actually select it. Okay, well, I'll select over here. Some of these have snow on them, some of them don't. That's because they have the custom primitive data set or not. And that obviously then picks up the material. One of them has. Do this. There we go. So you can see it works here. Now, unfortunately, regardless of being set here or not, that one's on all the time. Not sure why that's not updating. Yes, discard. Skip. So what's happening? It is not letting me quit. Save them. No. Unload. There we go. In order to get the custom primitive workflow to work for objects inside of mega assemblies, you can't add the custom primitive data to the mega assembly level, but you can add it to the blueprint. I'm just selecting things. So if I select this as a blueprint, open it here, and then these meshes. So this is it's sort of a level and a blueprint at the same time. I'm not entirely sure on this workflow. It's quite new to me. There is some Unreal videos about it. So if you Google for mega assemblies, there's a bit of a breakdown there. But basically, it's a way of kind of creating a sort of group using a sort of custom level. But these meshes, if you apply the custom primitive data here, does work. And so this one is sort of baking it into the models, into the level, but I'm not quite sure why this is different to what we see in Engine. So if I do this, this is now turned off, but if I do level, edit in place, if I turn this and turn this on, custom primitive snow 1, that should work. But if I exit and save, it's going to go away again. And you can see the snow coming off. But if I turn it back on here, now it does work. So there is a way of making the workflow work. As I say, I'm not quite sure why one's a blueprint, one's a level. If you drag them into the world, you get either the blueprint or the level. They both work as a way of getting custom primitive, or as a way of getting the models in. So this is a level instance, and this is a blueprint. So yeah, if you have used Mega Assemblies, have used this workflow, and you give some insights into exactly what's working and what's not, and why, that would be much appreciated. But for now, this workflow is working. We're able to bring in our Mega Assemblies, edit the instance to have snow on all of the meshes inside, and build up these big environments. Okay, that I think is it for kind of what we've been doing this week. Lots of environment work, building things out, getting ready to do some waterfalls for me next week, and more environment stuff for Will for the environment art. Obviously there are lots of separate dressing and details. Getting some lighting bleed here. I have to work out why that's happening and what's happening there. That's unintentional, unfortunately. Something to do with a LOD and distance, but we'll see if we can debug that later. But yeah, definitely coming together, looking pretty good, I think. And we'll carry on with that as we continue the rest of this month, and maybe some of next month as well. So cool. As always, big thanks for following the channel, keeping up with updates. Hopefully there's some interesting workflow things coming out of this. As I say, I'm going to do a little follow-up video now on this idea of a kind of elongated Fresnel, which I've used here for the ice cave, which is quite a nice little technique. And yeah, as always, if you have any questions or comments or feedback, please do reach out. And big thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. If you want to become a patron, the link is below. Yeah, and I'll see you all in about 5 minutes when I record another video talking about this elongated Fresnel. And I'll see you all next time.